Suggestions by some that its Minister Ebrahim Patel has downplayed the extent of the costs that COVID-19 and the lockdown will impose on the economy. He says while exact figures are hard to pinpoint, the impact of GDP will be very significant and there'll be big job losses, firm closures with high levels of social hardship. Columnist and political and social commentator Mukoni Ratshitanga joins us now to talk about the extent of the repercussions and what recovery plan would be apt. A very good evening to you, Mr. Ratshitanga, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Can we assume that the pandemic will cause a rapid and massive shock to all countries equally?
Well, I should think so, but remember that different countries have got different levels of economic development, social inequality, and so on and so forth. So I would think that the countries with, like South Africa, with a massive inequality, will be hardest hit. We have already seen estimates to the effect that we will lose anything between 3 to 7 million jobs. And that for a country like South Africa is really quite disastrous.
But you're saying that we are not necessarily appreciating the state of the nation and the world, we as a country. Why is that?
Well, you know, my biggest worry is that South Africans, especially at the leadership, and by leadership I don't just mean politics, I mean in broad terms, leaders in religion, in business, in a whole, in the economy, in a whole range of areas. You are witnessing still two things which are worrisome. One is that people are still talking past each other, and the second is that there's been very little discussion about what a post-COVID-19 South Africa should look like, and that for me is worrisome because we already know that the situation, we don't know the extent, the exact figures of, for example, job losses, but we do know that the situation is going to be very dire, and very little of our discussion, if at all, has got anything to do with what South Africa will look like post COVID-19. And I think that we need to be deploying, investing a lot of our resources and our public discourse in that question.
And do you say it's because there is an all-round short-termism on our point and depoliticization as well of society? That is part of the problem of South Africa. And of course, you know, one can say that can suggest another problem, and this is a controversial issue which some South Africans are almost allergic to hearing. I think that part of our problem remains still our inability to handle the national question properly. And you can see many of the discussions that are taking place, they are almost oblivious to this question and the reality of South African society. So I think that the sooner we come to these questions, the better. The issue that I was raising in the article that you are quoting, the short-termism, actually does not come from me. I was actually quoting the late British historian Eric Hobsbawm. He was specifically citing short-termism in the economy. And I am suggesting that short-termism is much more broader than the economy. It cascades into all nearly many sections of social life. So what would it take then to have what you call a comprehensive recovery plan? I know one of the things that you point to is government putting its cards on the table and exposing its shortfalls. Has it not done that? Do we not know what those are?
Well, we are South Africans. I think we know what those are. But it would be very good for government to state clearly its own appreciation of what those are, because it having done so would also automatically lead to inviting the rest of society to complement those weaknesses. But also to complement the strengths, by the way, because one is not suggesting that government is an inept quarter. No, certainly not from my point of view. But we do need government to lay out what, in its view, is a comprehensive recovery plan. What the role of each sector of society is going to be, has to be, and of course society must itself comment on that kind of plan, ready itself to bring certain material to the building site.
And you say the bedrock of what would be apt is something that claws back on the values of at least collective and self-reliance. What would you suggest, and how should we then come together as a society?
Let me put it directly. I mean, and I'm not the first one to raise this issue. There've been other commentators who have raised it. I mean, government has come up with a measure. One of the measures is that government will be giving 350 rand to every unemployed person, and that is to be welcomed. That is very good. The challenge, of course, is that this is borrowed money, and it is for 6 months. And one wonders whether government will be able to say after 6 months we are stopping, and what the consequences of that will be. Now, what I am suggesting, of course, together with other people who have made a similar suggestion, is that why don't we peg this 350 rand to some kind of community service program? Now, that's part of what a recovery plan would need to address. Almost probably even before that recovery plan. Now, that means that municipalities need to be thinking about this thing. Provincial governments need to be thinking about this thing, as well as national government. I think that this is an opportunity to rope in millions of our people into the development process, so that people do not become passive recipients of quote-unquote service delivery. And I in the article that you are referring to, I deliberately contrast service delivery, which is very much part of South Africa's political lexicon, and what the Tanzanians, after independence in 1961, termed uhuru na kazi, which means in Kiswahili, freedom and work. That if we did that, if we pegged the 350 rand with this community service program, we could go a long way to, one, rope in people in the development process. Two, we could build this spirit which we need of self-reliance. But I also think that it would help us to deal with a number of things. I mean, one of my concerns is just the ease with which some people in our society find to destroy public property, whether it's schools, roads, clinics, etc. Now, I think that if people participated in the building of schools, they would not find it so easy to destroy them. I also think that communities themselves would be the first to apprehend those who go around destroying public property, if there was a massive program, national program, which involved everybody in the process.
Now, I want to talk about the agency which you refer to. I know you also discourage the IMF, the prospect of the IMF, but if we talk about an indigent policy for South Africa, is it because there is a lack of, or we're too late in the building thereof?
No, in
if
fact,
you could answer that briefly, please. Mm-hmm.
No. Firstly, I didn't. The only comment I made about the IMF was with respect to the DA's call that the IMF must dictate to the government. I didn't make express an opinion as to whether government should or shouldn't go to the IMF. All I was saying with respect to the DA's call to the IMF is that it is ill-advised, it is dangerous, it will divide us some more, and that in any case the IMF is known for making these conditionalities throughout the African continent, and were it to do that now here in South Africa, it would merely confirm the image that much of the continent and the developing world has about the IMF. So really, if I can reiterate, I think that they should abandon that kind of ill-advised posture.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. I know I did ask another question. Thank you very much, columnist and political and social commentator Mukoni Ratshitanga.